considered as one of the most influential and successful Serbs in America, born and raised there as a third generation. He is retired publisher, president, and chief executive officer of the Plain Dealer, Ohio's largest newspaper. Also was inducted into the Cleveland Journalism Hall of Fame by the Press Club of Cleveland and was awarded the Ellis Island Medal of Honor by the National Ethnic Coalition Organization, one of the highest national awards in America. From humble beginnings to great career and success, meet Mr. Alax Machaskee.
My name is Alax Machaskee. I've explained many times why I don't have a typical Serbian sounding name. My name doesn't reveal my heritage. The fact of the matter is, I was born in the United States. My mother and father were born in the United States. And I think I speak Serbian pretty well, but I learned it all from my baba, my father's mother, who never went to one grade of school. So when they were living in Pennsylvania in the United States, and my deda on my father's side, he worked in a coal mining town, and Baba had a boarding house for miners. And she was only maybe 4 feet 6 inches tall, but she ran a house that was a boarding house for some 25, 26 miners, mostly Serbians and Croatians. So the language that was spoken, of course, at that time was, as I said then, Serbo-Croatian. And that's how my father grew up. So he started to go to school at the age of 7. He couldn't speak English very well. So the teacher asked him his name, and he said, through an interpreter, Đuro, correct, George, Machaskee. And it really should be in English, Masić, M-A-C-E-S-I-C-H. It came out Machaskee with 2 E's. So it sounds Polish, but it doesn't track to anything. So I've been kind of upset about that for many, many, many years, because I would rather that my name was Masić or Machaskee. As to my family background, my baba on my father's side was Milica Uzelac, and she was from Glina, one of the Kordonaši. She married a person by the name of Aleksandar Machaskee, and he was from a very, very small village called Kristina, not far from Karlovac. And on my mother's side, Baba's name was Maria Bene, and she was up on the Granica close to Subotica. And she married a stari Srbijanac by the name of Jakob Marinković from Aleksandrovac. So the background is almost 100% Serbian, maybe just a touch of Hungarian, but I'm proud of our heritage.
What was your first job? How did you earn your first money? And what was your experience in journalism?
I got hurt as a freshman in high school playing football, and I like sports. So I talked to the coach, and he suggested, why don't you go down to the local newspaper? This was in Warren, Ohio, a small city, maybe 60,000 population, about an hour's ride from Cleveland, and see if they could use a part-time employee. So I went down and I talked to the sports editor, and he says, well, we could use some help taking basketball reports on Tuesdays and Thursday nights. We can't pay you anything, but it would be a good experience. So I did that for 3 months. And then in a 2-person sports department, the number 2 person went off to the Korean War. And I was then just transferring into my sophomore year, 10th grade, and I was able to work out my schedule in school to work 20 hours a week and started writing stories for this newspaper. And by the time I was a junior, I was working 30 hours a week. And by the time I was a senior, I was working 40 hours a week.
What is the secret of your success?
Baba never went to one grade of school. I remember when I was probably 7 years old, she said, Alex, no work, no pork. Ako ne radiš, nećeš jesti. If you don't work, you're not going to eat. But also there were, different things along the way. I know my mother used to always say, well, you have to act like somebody, walk like somebody, talk like somebody. Maybe someday you'll be somebody. That's maybe an oversimplification. I don't know. I think that in the end, when I look back over my life, I've been very, very blessed by God in that He gave me opportunities. I try to make the most of them. I always had a good, solid work ethic. And as I became relatively successful, I also believe that if God has been good to me, then I owe it to be good to other people. So we try to be very helpful and do our part in philanthropy to help the sick and to help the poor. And, to do things wherever we can, whether it's monasteries or orphanages or wherever the need is. I try to direct some resources to help those institutions.
What kind of relations you had with your colleagues in the company?
I think the key is to be inquisitive, ask questions, and take the time out to listen to your employees. It doesn't matter whether it's the lowest person in the hierarchy, they always have good ideas. And I think as long as you show people the dignity and that you respect their thinking, if you ask them, how do you think we can make the company better, or how can we make our mission better, then I think you learn, and I never really believed in a lot of hard, formal personality evaluations. I was always more interested in talking to people and hearing their ideas. Do you know where you fit into the company? How do you think we can help you make your job better? And how can this company perform better? And I think listening is the key. I never believed in a kind of top-down structure where you say, well, you have to do it this way, this is the only way. No, I think you have to learn from your people. Christian Vagnakani was asked what makes the Cleveland Orchestra so great. And he said, it's the ability to listen while you're playing in a concert, to listen to everyone else that is playing on stage with you, and then to perform your part to the very, very best of your ability. So you think about that. I mean, that can apply to a corporation. I mean, where you're listening to people, and then you're asking people, encouraging them to perform to the very best of their ability. So I always thought that was kind of an interesting analogy.
When you come to Serbia, what do you like to visit here? And do you like and enjoy more Serbian music, culture, or customs and tradition?
Obviously, I like so many things about Serbia. First, I love the people. And I like, for the most part, the pace of life here. I think that I don't have enough time sometimes to enjoy some parts of the culture. I mean, to get to the museum, I would love to go to a Serbian opera. I would like to see a Serbian play. But for the most part, I gravitate towards the music because I can always find music. If not in Belgrade, I find it in Novi Sad. And that's also because for many years, just to keep my sanity running the newspaper, I had an orchestra for 40 years. So we played an awful lot of tambura music, and my 3 original members of the orchestra, now they've passed away. But we played everywhere from New York to California, to Florida, and to Chicago, every place. One of our greatest thrills that we were asked to play a warm-up, 40-minute warm-up for a Bob Hope show with 25,000 people. So here was, this Serbian orchestra with 25,000 people in the audience listening to us playing a variety, not only just Serbian, but Hungarian, Russian, Greek, Spanish music. And so it was a nice way to show off Serbian culture. When I was a youngster, I used to dance a lot of kolos. The problem with dancing kolos, for example, today is that most people don't know very many kolos. When I was playing tambura, we probably knew 40, 45, 50 kolos. And most people knew how to dance them because we would always play the kolos at the picnics. Today, everything is, ušest, very slow, and the kolos go on for 20 minutes, half hour, but the beat doesn't change. So I think kolo dancing has changed, just like the language has changed too.
How to improve image of Serbia and promote better Serbian culture in the world?
A few years ago, I made a suggestion to some government officials on this subject of Serbia's image around the world. And because of a lot of mistakes, whether it was mistakes by the United States or other countries or Serbia itself, the image, I think most people would agree, has not been very good. And that goes to some past political leadership and, the way opinions were formed. And I had said to a government official here that, look, if you don't have any money in the government to try to correct the image of Serbia, you have what we call in the United States jawbone power. You can invite to a dinner the top 10 or 12 most wealthiest Serbian businessmen, whether they're from Serbia or they're Serbians living in other countries, because we have them in Germany, Austria, France, Australia. And I said we would bring some wealthy Serbian people from the United States, sit down and discuss what the problem is, how to attract it, and put some money into a program to try to correct it. And it's just not a matter of public relations. You have to attack this many different ways. You have to go to the think tanks, where a lot of politicians get their ideas from think tanks, and correct the image there. You have to even look at textbooks, because I can assure you right now, there are textbooks being written that are not being written in an accurate way to reflect what happened during the 90s and what led to the 90s and what's happened since. Now, I will say there are more investments going on here. I think the relocation of the railroad tracks here and the Arab money that's going into redeveloping the waterfront is good. I think the fact that new department stores being attracted and invested in by Jewish investors, I think what is being done maybe up in Vojvodina by the Chinese investments, those are all good, positive signs. But there's much more to be done. From the outside, I think there are people that would like to see more being done on judicial reform, more being done on banking reform, because most people in the United States, they don't send money through the banks. Maybe they use Western Union once in a while, but for the most part, they wait until some trusted friend is coming to Serbia and they give them the money to give to their relatives. There's need for economic reform. There's need for agricultural reform. You have great land in Serbia, but why would you import produce from other countries when you could grow it here? So I think these are the things that people in the diaspora see. I just wish that there was much, much more dialogue going on between government officials in Serbia and the United States. One of the positive things that's happening is that there is a resuscitation of the cooperation between the Ohio National Guard and the Serbian government. There was a program started some years ago for the Ohio National Guard to train the military in Serbia, but then after General Waite of the Ohio National Guard retired, it kind of slumped a little bit. Now it's being resuscitated again, and the Ohio National Guard is in a position to work with the Serbian military on civil projects, and there's a lot that they can done in that regard. Most recently, there was a group of chaplains that came from Serbia and to the United States. I think more interaction between Serbian people from Serbia and Serbian people in the diaspora is a very good approach. They have to get to know one another and talk to one another.
You are helping and promoting Serbia in a very positive way. Can you tell us more about Serbian Cultural Garden in Cleveland, Ohio?
We are very proud in Cleveland to have Rockefeller Park. It was established by John D. Rockefeller, and in Rockefeller Park, over about a 5-mile stretch, we have some 35 different nationality gardens. We have the Hungarian, the Irish, the Italian, the Russian, the Armenian gardens. And many years ago, in the 1930s, the Slovenians started the garden, and a few years later they took in the Serbians and Croatians, and it was known as the Yugoslav gardens. That lasted until Yugoslavia fell apart, and then the Serbians and Croatians were out. The garden remained Slovenian garden. I was still publisher and chief executive of the newspaper in Cleveland, the Plain Dealer, and I said we're going to have a Serbian garden. So with that, we had a fundraiser. We raised a substantial amount of money, and we got from the city a very, very nice piece of land along the main boulevard, and we started. Every year we have a fundraiser with our golf outing and dinner afterwards, attracts a number of people, and we raise pretty significant funds, maybe $12,000 to $14,000 a year, so that we can put a new bust in the garden, if not every year, then every other year, or every year and a half. And so obviously we have Nikola Tesla in the garden, we have Mileva Maric, King Peter I, Vuk Karadžić, we have Petar Njegoš, we've got Michael Pupin, we have Milutin Milankovic, we have Mokranac, and last year we put in Nadezhda Petrovic, and maybe next year we'll put in Desanka Maksimovic. But we have 9 statues in the garden now, and we're adding, and it's very beautiful. One of the things that happens every year, the gardens as a whole work together to call One World Day, because the theme of the gardens are peace through understanding. One World Day has a major, major parade that goes through all the gardens, and there's also a naturalization ceremony where people are naturalized to become United States citizens. This year, Serbian Garden is being honored by having on August 25th the naturalization ceremony right at our garden. So there will be thousands and thousands of people looking and observing and walking through the Serbian Cultural Garden as part of this One World Day festival. We will also have dancers, and Serbian dancers and singers, but the main attraction will be people getting their citizenship papers, and a number of elected officials will be there to conduct the naturalization ceremony. So there will be a lot of focus on the Serbian Garden this year on August 25th.
How to promote Serbian culture all over the world, and how Americans can understand our culture better?
I think that one way would be to perhaps through the foreign service part of the government to establish many, many more honorary consulates, but to establish them, to really give them a mission to promote Serbia in the process. I've been an honorary consul of Republic of Serbia now for 15 or more years, but there's never really been a protocol as to what I'm supposed to do as a consul. So there's an opportunity there to create more consuls. It doesn't cost them any money. I mean, I have an office, but I pay my own office rent and so forth. But and then I think it would encourage people to reach out. I would like to see more in the way of not just dance groups or musical groups coming to Cleveland. I would love to see a tour of Serbian actors that would come to the States, but let's say Cleveland, Ohio, and to put on a Serbian play. Okay, so not everyone understands Serbian, but there are these teleprompters, not teleprompters today, but these things like they use at concerts where they're speaking, where they're singing in Italian or German or something, and they translate. So I think it would be great to be able to watch a Serbian play. You know, I haven't seen a Serbian play since I was about 12 years old. I used to play in a Serbian play as part of the church. So that's one way. I think that, you know, I'm sure that there's probably a good ballet company somewhere in Serbia, but I've never seen a Serbian ballet. I go to Russia, I see it. I see Russian ballets come to the United States. So there's much more that can be done with the arts, not just the tambura players or the occasional soloist that comes by, sometimes even the rock groups or the hot metal groups. But I think that from my point of view, widening the variety of culture that Serbia has in the performing arts and to export that to different parts of the world, I think would be very good. And I think there are enough successful people around the world that would take up sponsorship of those groups. Some of them come even without sponsorship. If you can imagine, 2 years ago, we had a Serbian group from Switzerland, funded by the Swiss government, that came to Cleveland and put on a capacity-filled auditorium of Serbian dancing. I mean, so how did this happen? It's just that chapter was very energetic. They did some fundraising on their own, but the government there exported them to come to Ohio.
Which advice would you give to young people in Serbia?
I don't think that it's a solution for young people to say there's no hope for me in Serbia and to leave. Now that's easier for me to say because I don't live here. But I think there is strength in numbers, and if the young people show that they are willing to be a part of improving things, whether it's physical improvements or cultural improvements, I think if they are willing to rally support to say we want to make things better here in this country, and we want a voice, we want somebody to listen to what our ideas are on how to make things better, and how can we participate with business people, whether it's through the Chamber of Commerce or the American companies. You have some 50 American companies over here. And what's the interaction between young people and those companies? And I think that the people who have been a success and made a successful life in Serbia, they have an obligation to return something as well and to create opportunities for young people. We're all going to be at a later age someday and pass along. So what's our legacy? I mean, and if we can't leave a good legacy for the young people to build a foundation on to make life better, then there's little hope. I mean, it's a matter of having an integrity of purpose. You want to try to make life better for everyone. And you're not going to do it by leaving the country.
Can you give some advice for second, third, and fourth generation of young Serbs in diaspora? How can they connect more with Serbia?
Well, I think that the church has a possibility to preserve the culture and to teach more. I mean, we have so many. That's what's wonderful about the Serbian garden. People, until we put Mileva Maric in the garden, most people in the United States never knew that she was Albert Einstein's wife and that she contributed as much to his inventions that he did. He turned out to be a pretty bad person as far as Mileva Maric was concerned, and he made a terrible mistake by not including her on the Nobel Peace Prize. But how many people know that? So how many people know what Milutin Milankovic has done on the atmosphere? So I think more has to be done to make our young people proud and aware of how many great Serbian people we have. It's not just a matter of some military figure. It's a matter of our writers, our poets. That's another thing.
This was Mr. Alax Machaskee, a great philanthropist and an advocate of Serbian culture and heritage.